Hello and welcome to the Astrology Forecast. My name is Sage, here as your eye into the sky, letting you know what the cosmic events are for the week, why they matter, and how you can use this information in your everyday life. Since we are officially in the midst of Gemini season, I hope everybody who is a Gemini is having a great time, a great birthday season, especially this one. This is a particularly lucky Gemini season. So if you're listening and you're a Gemini sun, moon, or rising, then I want you to know that for the next year, you're being blessed with a dose of positivity, good luck, and optimism thanks to the planet Jupiter. So a lot of us were talking about Jupiter in Gemini last week. It actually just entered yesterday, so a huge amount of energy is being basically influenced into the sign of Gemini. It is definitely a very significant shift, especially since we have not seen this since 2012. June of 2012 until June of 2013 was the last time that Jupiter was in Gemini. I encourage you to think back on what was going on in your life and really think about what themes and maybe good experiences or maybe challenging experiences came up for you during that time, as it's likely that some of those themes are going to come back around or kind of take on a new light in this next Jupiter cycle. So with that, Gemini season, 50% off solar return readings. If you or a friend is interested in having a solar return reading, which is just essentially a birthday reading, and it's a really fun reading because you get to see what you can expect for the upcoming 12 months. Again, I do offer gift certificates, so if you have a friend or a loved one in your life and you are feeling called to gift them a reading, I promise you this is one of the coolest gifts that you can give, because who doesn't want to know more about themselves and what they can expect in their own life? So again, that is 50% off. The link is below if you are interested in getting one of those. And if you are looking to gift it to somebody, make sure you head over to my Instagram and message me there, and I can make sure that we get that all set up for you. Please make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, do all the love things. I really appreciate it. All of the support. It means a lot, and I really hope that by doing this, we're able to get this forecast with even more traction and hopefully have more and more people just listening and finding out what they can expect for their week ahead. As for this week, pretty calm week. Last week was a lot. We had the full moon, we had Jupiter enter Gemini, we had Venus enter Gemini. Geminis, you guys are feeling good right now. This week is honestly a little bit calmer. We have just maybe a couple things to really go over. Technically three, but two of those are kind of on the tail end and the back end and whatever. It's not really as significant as last week. You guys are going to understand what I mean when I get into it. But anyway, let's dive right in. Again, this is a much calmer week, but we do have some potentially surprising things happening towards the end of the week. It also might be a challenging week in love and relationships, so definitely stay tuned. I promise this won't be super long, but it will be very valuable. So listen in and let's get started. So the first major cosmic event happening this week is not exactly happening on a singular day. We're actually seeing this one happening throughout the course of the entire week. So this is Venus being combust the sun in Gemini. Now, the word combust, I'm going to break it down, I promise. It is a little bit of a funky word. Basically, it just means that this planet, Venus, is essentially getting like burnt up by the sun, right? That's kind of what combust means and symbolizes. It sort of means that the energy of this planet and all of the things it represents, in this case, Venus is the planet of value, love, relationships, beauty, anything aesthetic and art related. Those are all Venusian. Relationships, of course, are not just romantic, but also platonic. So that includes friendships and those with family, especially women, because Venus is a feminine energy. Now, Venus being combust the sun, not so great for Venus, only because this can create a sense where all of the things that Venus does rule over are kind of getting a little bit more burnt by the sun's energy. This can be a little bit challenging, especially when it comes to relationships. Now, the good news about this is that by the end of this week, we are approaching a Venus Sun cazimi on June 4th. So that's actually next Tuesday. But the good news about this is also what's known as a Venus reset. Resets happen to a planet every time it goes cazimi with the sun, meaning basically the sun and that planet hold hands in the sky for a moment in time. And this essentially creates a reset where Venus is moving from being a morning star into eventually now becoming an evening star by the summer, which is really nice for Venus. This is really where Venus thrives. Now, again, this combust energy happening pretty much from May 25th, 26th, all the way until about June 2nd, 3rd, this might cause some shifts in relationships, so be aware. You might find the values in your relationships are changing. This can also be the relationship with yourself, of course. Remember that always takes precedence here. But any type of relationship, even the ones that you have with your own finances and the things that you value, your material resources, pay attention to the way that you honor and value these things or these people in your life, and you might notice that feelings sort of change, that you might feel like you want something maybe a little bit new and different and interesting and a little bit more versatile. It keeps you thinking. I say that because it's in the sign of Gemini, and Gemini is the sign of mental adaptability, flexibility, and versatility. So Gemini doesn't like to stay stuck on one thing for too long. So we might notice some shifts in our priorities when it comes to those relationships in our life. Again, anything that we value, all the connections that we have with people. So again, this might be subtle or this might not be subtle. It really depends on where it shows up in your birth chart. For example, if you are a Gemini sun, moon, and especially Gemini rising, it's going to be a little bit more potent for you. It's definitely an energy that you might notice showing up where all of a sudden you're sensing this reset in all of the Venusian areas of your thinking and of your way of being. This again relates to the relationship you have with the things you value, the people you value, the connections in your life. And even if you are taking on a more, let's say, abstract or aesthetic approach, it could just simply be the things in your life that visually or aesthetically bring value to you. It could be as simple as your wardrobe. Again, we're not sure until we look deeply into your specific chart. And as you guys know, I do offer chart readings. Even just a monthly reading can let you know where this particular combustion is showing up in your chart. It's only $50 if you're interested in that. Again, the link is below. And if not, make sure that you are learning this yourself, right? Getting more educated. This is going to add more tools to your arsenal. You will thank yourself later. And even during the time when these transits are happening, it gives you a lot more power, a lot more awareness. And who doesn't want more of that, right? All right, so that was Venus. Again, it's a whole week long energy where we might just simply feel this shift. But by the time we reach the Cazimi, things will become more clear. If this week feels confusing in relationships, if it feels like suddenly the things that I value, the way that I go about my connections with other people, maybe the women in my life are starting to act differently. And this could be for a good reason or not, but it definitely might show up for us this week where we're having to sort of reorient the way that we value these connections and these things in our life. And if it feels confusing, know that by June 4th, we will sort of have that like light bulb moment, that aha moment, which will give us a lot more clarity and understanding as we approach this new reset. And just for reference sake, the last time that we actually had a Venus reset in Gemini was June of 2020, right in the thick of that pandemic. So again, thinking back to maybe whatever shifts were occurring for you during that time, this could also be a bit reminiscent of that energy and of those situations, especially pertaining to the area of your chart ruled by Gemini, which I really advise you knowing, especially currently right now. If you don't know anything about your birth chart, I really recommend, especially if you're listening to this forecast and getting value, at least just go online and figure out what house you have Gemini in. You don't have to have a planet in that house to still have Gemini in your chart. That's a huge fallacy. A lot of people message me and reach out and ask, well, I don't really have this sign in my chart. Everybody has every single sign in your chart. Even if you don't have planets in that sign will still influence you, especially when planets such as Venus are moving through that sign currently. All right, guys. So again, message me if you're confused about that. Otherwise, take advantage of this week of reshifting our values, reorienting things, and prepare ourselves for the impending Venus reset coming up next week. All right, now shifting gears to the Taurus sector of your chart. If you don't know where this is in your chart, if you're not sure what area of your life is ruled by Taurus, I encourage you to pause this video and go find out. I promise you will give you a lot deeper understanding of what I'm about to share. So at the end of this week, on Thursday, May 30th, Mercury is conjunct the planet Uranus in the sign of Taurus. Now, Mercury is the planet of our mouth, our mind. It rules over communication. It deals with everything intellectual. In fact, Mercury is known as the messenger of the gods, especially when we go back to Greek and Roman mythology. Now, the messenger of the gods essentially means that Mercury was moving quickly to deliver information. In fact, the god Mercury was depicted with wings on his feet to symbolize the speed of thought. And so when we look at the planet Mercury, we know that we're dealing with the what's on our mind and how that is expressed back out into the world. It also deals with teaching and learning. So again, retaining information, memory, thinking, and even transactions, as Mercury is the mercantile. And so when we think of Mercury, think of buying and selling, exchanges, sales. A lot of salesmen have Mercury placements, strong ones, because again, Mercury does deal with that back and forth again, which is what messages or messengers do, right? They travel back and forth, and that's exactly what Mercury does, as it is the quickest planet to move across or move around the sun. And so when we have Mercury conjunct Uranus, this is going to create some electricity. This is like a lightning zap to our thoughts. And why do I say that? Or Uranus is the planet of, I say it's the WTF planet, because Uranus is this planet that delivers shock. It's the planet of rebellion, right? And whenever something is rebellious, it is a shock factor, it's a wow factor. And so Uranus is this planet of progress, of freedom, of liberation, of challenging the status quo. We go back to the history of Uranus up until the time we discovered it, which wasn't until the 1800s, by the way. We believed that the edge of the visible universe, all that we had, was up to Saturn, right? Because we didn't have the technology to go further than that. And then we discovered Uranus, this wacky, wild planet that rotates on its side, the only planet in the entire solar system to do that. And this really does symbolize the eccentricity of Uranus. This is a very unique energy. And Uranus delivers shock and surprise and ultimately change. So when we have Mercury, this planet that deals with our mouth and our mind, what we think about and what we talk about, it's getting this electric zap by Uranus that's basically saying, think outside the box. And on top of that, be ready for change and unexpected information to come your way. I wouldn't be surprised if we hear some interesting news that makes our jaw drop. Wouldn't be surprised if you receive a letter, or in this case, maybe an email, because we're dealing with a more techie energy, especially with Uranus. And this could be where all of a sudden we're like, wow, I wasn't expecting that, right? That's sort of what we are here to embrace during the end of this week. We may not feel it up until about Wednesday, Thursday, and then suddenly you might realize that there's some surprises coming up, that you're learning news that you weren't expecting. And this can be good things, right? This can be genius things. And I want to emphasize that for a second, because while Uranus can bring a little bit of hesitation, as it does often initiate change and maybe even shocking twists and turns, which a lot of us really aren't ready for all the time, it's also the energy of the genius. This is innovation and insight at its finest. When we want to talk about next level progress and evolution, we want to talk about Uranus. And what better planet to conjunct it but Mercury, the planet of talking? So we are literally doing just what I said. We are talking about progress. We are talking about change. Look at where this is showing up in your chart. I wouldn't be surprised if you experience a massive breakthrough in this area of your life. If the news that is delivered to you is a bit shocking and maybe it makes you have to reorient your thinking, hello, Mercury, this can actually be for a good reason, because it's bringing change, it's bringing innovation to this area of your life. If things have been feeling stuck and stagnant, it is Taurus energy. This is fixed Earth. Taurus is arguably the most stubborn energy we have in the zodiac. And so let's not forget that, as sometimes during this energy, we might feel a stubbornness, a resistance to change. So, the best piece of advice I can give for the end of this week, especially Thursday, be adaptable and be flexible. Mercury is all about that, right? Mercury is this very adaptable, flexible, kind of more versatile energy. But Taurus is not. And of course, we have had Mercury in Taurus now for some time. So we've been working with this energy. Maybe we've been feeling like our thoughts and our motivation to maybe learn and to communicate on certain things has been feeling a little bit more stuck in the mud, and maybe we feel like we're in a rut to some degree, know that that will shift, and it might actually be almost like the hammer kind of coming down and shattering whatever mold and whatever structure that we've been forming in our minds through Mercury being in Taurus. When it conjuncts Uranus, again, it's like that lightning bolt. It's like taking the hammer and smashing it and saying, yes, it's still here, but it's in a new form, and we're going to have to adjust and adapt and accept change. Biggest piece of advice: accept change. In the Taurus area of our life, this is not the easiest thing to do. I'm going to warn you all right now, but know that it will be for our betterment, our progress, and ultimately our evolution in this area of our life. Who doesn't want to go to the next level? Sometimes new levels, new devils, but we can't get there where we can't change things if nothing changes. If nothing changes, nothing changes. And this is really what we have to embrace and know this week as we deal with Mercury being conjunct Uranus. So check out where this is showing up in your chart. Wouldn't be surprised if we are dealt some massive news, even in the news. Pay attention to the news. And this is the last thing I'm going to say on this point. Pay attention to the news, social media. I've been noticing a lot of celebrity downfall, which, if you check on my Instagram story, also can be related back to Pluto in Aquarius, which is actually in square with a lot of the planets that we've been talking about, or it was. And so just know that if we pay attention to the news, we might find that some information is leaked. Some shocking news story comes out that really makes us readjust and reorient the way we think, maybe even what we're discussing around, in society, right? The collective conversation might be kind of, again, zapped with that eccentricity, that interesting uniqueness that Uranus can bring, and oftentimes this can result in some major changes. So just be ready and embrace this, upcoming conjunction that we have between Mercury and Uranus. Last but not least, we are going to check out the Gemini and Aquarius parts of our chart, because at the end of this week, and I'm literally talking the end of this week, in fact, what I'm about to share could theoretically be discussed on next week's forecast. But at the same time, I think it's sometimes important to know ahead of time, right? And so I'm going to be discussing Sunday, June 2nd, when Jupiter in Gemini trines Pluto in Aquarius. Now, we might be feeling this energy as early as end of this week, maybe Friday, Saturday, but Sunday is when this exactly happens. And what this means is that Jupiter, which just entered Gemini on the 25th of May, so it's really in those very early degrees of Gemini, Jupiter is in air sign, or Jupiter is in an air sign, Gemini, and it is forming a really positive relationship with this other planet, Pluto, also in an air sign. So air signs get along really well with each other. Pluto is in the very beginning degrees of Aquarius. And so we have this beautiful harmony forming between this planet Jupiter, this larger than life energy, this positive, optimistic, happy planet that oftentimes can bring luck and abundance to our life. It is forming a positive relationship, thankfully, with Pluto, the planet of death, rebirth, transformation, power, control, and transformation. Now, when we have these two energies coming together in what's known as a trine, this can incite powerfully positive transformation. Now, again, knowing where this shows up in your chart is key, because if you look at the house that Gemini rules and the house that Aquarius rules, you'll get a better idea of what areas of your life are getting this beautiful zap of positive energy. This energy might also make us want to shift the way we think about things, as this is happening in the air houses within our chart. Now, again, remember, the air houses are usually the areas of our life where we do the most thinking, where we have the most conversations and the most connections, because that's what air represents. Jupiter in Gemini is expanding all Gemini related topics. This can include technology. We've seen a lot of advancements in the past when Jupiter was in Gemini, where technology took on massive new heights. And Pluto in Aquarius, same thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of this week, and perhaps even the next couple of weeks, as these planets are a bit slower in their orbit, so they typically take longer periods of time to move through the zodiac, which means that they'll be conjunct for a little longer than, let's say, the moon or Mercury, which moves a lot faster. And so during these next few weeks, especially leading up to this weekend, we might see some major shifts in the tech and digital space. Pluto in Aquarius, as many of us know already, is the massive influx of AI that people have been discussing. And Jupiter in Gemini is really going to rev that up and pretty much push it forward. It's like the boost that AI has been needing. And depending on what you feel about that is not really the point of this. But know that technological advancements are likely to occur, especially this month. Other things is social media. Again, we're talking air signs. These are the social signs. And so air signs, especially Gemini and Aquarius, actually, both deal with the collective. And so with Jupiter and Gemini, especially now with this trine to Pluto, we're really seeing this transformation of the collective energy, especially regarding how we communicate with one another. This might even incite a lot of social change. I wouldn't be surprised if we see like a powerful hashtag come out and make waves in our society. It's actually funny I say waves because Aquarius is the symbol that has the waves. I don't know if it's behind me. Oh no, I think it's below. There it is. Right? So we see the waves of Aquarius. So it's almost like making waves in society. And Jupiter expands things. Jupiter is the planet known for abundance. And so the kind of energy with Jupiter is like more is never enough, which can be good and can be not so good, right? Because sometimes too much of something is too much, right? Jupiter hasn't learned that lesson quite enough. And so with Jupiter and Gemini trining Pluto, we can expect to see a lot of influx of positive communication, but also with Pluto's influence, Pluto is the planet of control. It could also be that we see some more widespread use of control, especially in these areas of communication, such as social media, technology, anything of that nature. We might notice that there might be some pushes towards, again, that collective control, which Pluto and Aquarius doesn't love so much. And so we could even see some pushback, especially with what I just discussed previously, that Mercury-Uranus conjunction could create some pushback, especially since those planets, especially Uranus, is all about change. So again, we have a kind of a cosmic soup happening, especially towards the end of this week. We can expect to see a lot of shifts occurring, especially on a collective level. But again, it will show up in your life personally. I guarantee you that. Astrology is always happening, whether we're aware of it or not. The key here is to know what area of your life to look out for these changes, to be aware of where these shifts are occurring. And again, I don't say this to just like beat a dead horse, but I mean it. People are getting a lot of benefit by actually sitting down with me for 30 minutes to an hour and going over the major transits, the major events going on in your chart for this upcoming month. June is quickly approaching. For $50, we can chat and you can know where all of this is showing up in your life. If you have any question, because again, it's not even just the house, that is one component, but we also want to look at the planets in your chart that are in that house. Knowing that information can doubly enhance the accuracy of this particular insight, right? Knowing what I'm sharing on this forecast is beautiful, and I encourage everybody to listen. But I also encourage you to get an even deeper foundational understanding of your chart and then keep up regularly and know where the planets are showing up in your chart. I guarantee you, this is how I live my life. Like I would never tell you to do something that I'm not already doing. And I help all of my close friends and family, as a lot of you probably listening know. This is what we use to understand what we can expect, how to work with this energy, and basically how can I align with it so I can flow downstream and not be caught up in the ripples and the riptide of whatever might be occurring cosmically. So all of that to say, if you are interested in chatting with me, the link is below and we can chat and see what's up with what's going on in your chart. All right, guys, so that pretty much wraps us up here. Again, Venus combust, Mercury conjunct Uranus, and Jupiter doing some really great things with Pluto. It is a calmer week, especially the beginning of this week. We can take a deep breath after that full moon in Sag we had last week. But know that towards the end of this week, to be flexible, to be open-minded, as that conjunction between Mercury and Uranus is going exact. Venus is entering her reset period, so pay attention to how you feel with your relationships, things you value, and pay attention to social media, as again, we might notice some massive shifts and innovative changes in those collective areas. So with that, thank you all so much for tuning in. If you got value from this video, please go ahead, make sure you hit that like button. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe. And if you want to stay up to date every single week, that notification bell can keep you up to date as I do post a new forecast every single Sunday. So with that, send you all so much love. Have a beautiful week, and I'll see you all again next Sunday.